This is the first time ever I'm doing live, so I don't know. I've been trying to record a video on this fabulous Saturn Uranus square story that that landed on my lap last night, and I have been running with it since. And I can't fit it in 15 minutes, so it's gonna have to. And I want it on Instagram. So a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, who's a human design expert, last night was excitedly telling me about this new thing that has like acted as a bombshell within the human design community, which essentially was about how the software, like astro.com for astrologers, there is a similar software that many human design readers use, introduced a new type of chart, or rather your natal human design chart, but it's just very different, and in fact so different that it's shocking beyond words to people, and mostly from what I've discovered don't relate to it. And so I was like excited to dig a bit deeper, and I quickly realized what this was about was astrology within human design. So what I mean by that is that the human design chart, as it's mostly been used so far by the human design community, was based on tropical astrology. And then the software people recently decided to introduce sidereal astrology chart. And if you're an astrologer, you will know that that doesn't mean it's a potentially considerably different chart. It doesn't have to be, but it can be. And so first, I want to just say a few things about the differences. What is that? What's the difference? What's a sidereal? What's tropical? So, and how in itself that has some meaning, and it's worth considering the very difference, and then deciding based on that which one you want to follow more, or you want to use for yourself, either human design chart or astrology chart. So tropical astrology is astrology that most astrologers use. I know some that use sidereal, and it's usually as well as tropical. But most of us, I certainly only use tropical. I have dabbled in sidereal and decided it doesn't really make enough. Well, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't align. I don't agree with it. I don't find it as meaningful, and I'll explain in a moment why. But essentially, and then sidereal is like I said, a slightly different way of using astrology, or it's a slightly different astrology. It's not really using it. It's like the astrology is different. So let me explain a little bit about that. So all the signs, archetypes, right? I don't know, Aries, Taurus, Pisces, Gemini, Leo, all of them essentially groupings of stars, so-called constellations, that form a certain, a cluster in the skies, and they follow in that certain order. That's what signs are. Now, these in reality, in real world, in real life, these constellations move slowly, and I don't know exactly the astronomy there. I was never big on astronomy, but basically they move by certain degrees, so much, in time. In other words, if you were born on, like, let's use my example, 6th of May 1969, and my Mars is in Sagittarius, it's in certain placement, that is 5 years later, that same Mars will be in, I think, either Capricorn or maybe Scorpio, I'm not sure, either side, which means that yes, I would have a very different chart. So, but what tropical is, so that's sidereal, that it's moving, the fact that these constellations are moving, and therefore if you're born a few years later, the same placement of the sun will be in a different sign potentially. Tropical, however, what we all use, as in most of us astrology, like I say, is those constellations in the sky as per 0 year AD. Now, as you can see, that's like a huge difference in terms of time, but also in terms of the actual astrology potentially. But to me, so why I chose tropical, and possibly why many of us do, astrologers and alike, is almost like I view it as like an accumulation of a wisdom of all these esoteric researchers, like a research library, like the biggest research library you can find on one topic, astrology, right? Or archetypes, essentially. And so it's accumulated human experience of these archetypes, and for that accumulation to be effective, that starting point was chosen, maybe needs to be fixed, i.e. as per year 0 AD. So I love that. I love when I consider all my archetypes in my chart, the ones that are specific to me. We are all archetypes, or we have them all in us. We all have all of them in us. But when I consider some of them, I'm standing on this evolution of knowledge and accumulation of that wisdom, and then I'm extracting what's so rich, and then I'm extracting what's relevant to me from that. So that's why I prefer tropical. So if that means anything to anyone, then if you're a human design reader or interested in human design, then maybe just, that would be also a reason to maybe, make a decision which chart you prefer out of the two, should you be also affected badly by this bombshell of news in human design community. Now, the other thing, I made some notes, I'm trying to be concise and to the point. Right, yes, the timing. So I feel that the fact this has happened now, and by the sound of from what I've seen, it has shaken the community, or some people I follow, I've watched or whatever, and they're either upset or confused or downright, upset, like I say. I think a consolation or possibly would be that if something has arrived, if something has come to our field of awareness, it's there for a reason. But I think the reason isn't so that we change, or we certainly are forced or feel forced to change our own view of who we are, but more as it's like an invitation to contemplate our relationship to this new us, so new chart, that, if you are into this, you would identify yourself with it. And I can see some comments there, and I'm sorry, I don't do live, never done it before, I can't read, it'll just throw me, but maybe ask me later, whoever you are. So that's exactly, just threw me, where was I? Yes, so I kind of feel about these new things that come into our awareness as something that is like clothes, I'm sure depends how old you are, but you have, or even irrespective of that, maybe as young when you like to change many styles throughout your years of life. And that's what these charts to me are about, just testing who you are with these new clothes. And just trying on and seeing and discovering possibly that actually you're far more, sporty than sexy, or the other way around, if we're talking fashion here. But more importantly, it's not about deciding who you are based on these charts. It's about just dancing for a little while with these new concepts that all of a sudden are facing you as potentially your own, and then deciding whether you want to go with them or not. So there's that piece that I found that works for me whenever I was driven or kind of excited to go into a different direction, whether there are so many other astrology charts you can have, and I have certainly explored all of them to my knowledge. And they all gave me something. And by contemplating that new me, I got so much insight into the old me, and then I stayed with the old me or not. That again is your choice or decision. So the timing that it's happened now, to me, is really just an invitation to do this. Now, another thing I thought, and this friend who actually shared this with me, she said beautifully, like, because all of these things I can relate to if I want to, but it's like all about, it's to say that all these archetypes are in us, and that's exactly it. So it's like, do you want to call this friend out to play with or not? So that's the game. That's the game here, really, whether it's astrology or human design, if you ask me. Now, I think really interestingly, in my view, so all this like concept, this sense that the old structures, so the old astrology or just the old chart or the old style of doing human design or astrology or whatever, Saturn, right, is being shaken up by Uranus square. That's kind of part of that story. But the other piece there, what I feel is is also, sorry, I'm just reading my notes. They don't seem to be coherent as I'm reading them. It's the Aquarius piece here. So we had a new moon in Aquarius just a week or so ago, and we had this rare alignment of all the planets in Aquarius then, and which is like, I think I've heard someone say that it's 1962 was the last time they were all like that together, and I noticed it was just wonderful. Noticed around that time, in the run up to the new moon, and then around the new moon, as in astrology community in particular, which is kind of my greater community, meaning I know far more many astrologers than human design readers, but I noticed a shift in the way, or rather what content people were sharing. Not the quality of the content, it's always, great, and it's down to the writing, but it's like what the content was. And all of a sudden it shifted towards far more personal. And in fact, there was one astrologer, I just loved that post, I think I must have shared it as well. They actually said, I've been thinking about what to write about this moon in new moon in Aquarius, and I can't think of anything. It was along this line. I mean, I'm not quoting, verbatim, but I'm just going to talk about my own experience with it. And I was like, yes, that's it. So my point here is that as either astrologer or as a human design reader, you may, I know I would have been in the past, and I possibly was, maybe shaken a bit by this kind of like, so what is my expertise here? How do I read this? How do I, how's this business of reading charts, whichever charts you're reading, how's it going to be affected by this like new thing that has come, has arrived? And I think the Aquarius piece there, and that it's happening just around now time, and if you ask me, Saturn Uranus, Saturn Jupiter conjunction in Aquarius we just had in December, is the beginning of Aquarius age for me. It's asking us to shed this identity of expertise, and I think it's the market, business-wise speaking here, the market is crowded, it's overcrowded. But more to the point, if we are just all experts in a field, there are only so many fields that we can be experts in. So think of tomorrow, so this is Uranus, Taurus piece, economy and sustainable economy. Imagine if we all are experts on who we are, and then we choose the modality we relate this uniqueness of ours through. So I mostly through astrology, although I'm introducing human design and you'll hear about that soon. Or if you're a human design reader only, or whatever your thing is, tarot reader, blah blah. Imagine if you just channel you through that, and you teach what it's like to be you through the lens of either astrology or, like I say, human design. Now that means that your content is irreplaceable. What's the word when you are? You can't copy it, something like that. You can't, so only you can speak of that. So you, if I want to learn about those particular placements, and you might have, it gets narrows itself down, so you have certain, Venus in Aries, but then it's also trining Mars, and then it's also opposite Pluto. When I speak of that, there will be only so many people that can actually relate to that, and it will be useful to them. So I'll have a smaller market, but I'll have a far more sustainable audience and therefore business, right? If I speak through myself. So there's that piece, Uranus Taurus squaring Saturn Aquarius. But Saturn Aquarius is also about integrity in our individuality, or just integrity, but also Saturn being business integrity. So we can certainly have considered myself, and I do consider myself expert in astrology, but I know a quality difference when I speak from my own placements. I can add so much more juice and so much more richness and depth, and yet it is only my placement, so it's only my version of that placement. But there is this richness and depth that only I can bring to that particular set of my own circumstances, and that is a value. That's for something I will pay far more for that, talking business here, Saturn Aquarius, than for far more diluted and kind of thinned down. When a teacher talks about a bigger picture, there is only so many hours and so many minutes or whatever to cover all that. I just want this kind of more direct line to the knowledge that's relevant to me. And Aquarius era, I think, is inviting us to do that. And this is an example. I think the fact that many readers, human design, may have been shaken by this. And I know when on my journey with astrology, I had a few of those shakeups. This is why, because we should not identify ourselves too much as experts in any modality, but experts in how we are living with that modality, how we are engaging with that modality. So that's the piece, at least if you ask me. And I think I may have exhausted that one. And so there's one last piece. I think that's that. Yeah. And one last piece is just on Saturn-Uranus square, in the sense that, and again, it is a sign of the Aquarian times, which is that Saturn is a container. It's the 3D reality. It's the skin. It's the bones. It's like the limit. It's like, this is where I end and you begin, and you begin. Uranus is, I was going to say totality, but that's kind of more Neptune. What I mean by Uranian totality or Aquarian totality, I mean points of view. I mean frequencies, individual frequencies, and all the different individual frequencies that we all carry. And this is, I know, slightly more human design lingo, but still energy and frequencies talk of the language for us, for being human. Also science as well, isn't it? Anyway, so the point of Saturn in Aquarius, of the Aquarian age, and now at this moment in time, as we're literally having the Saturn-Uranus square, is that we are invited and we are challenged, we are invited to cultivate a practice of containing multiple points of view, multiple truths, multiple and different individuals, different pieces in the puzzle, but containing it. So it's okay to go off and separate ourselves far away and just engage with the like-minded people. Meaning not it's okay, sorry, it's easy. That's easy. I think I would imagine we've all been there, and we would agree that it's easy. But the challenge is that to do this, to contain the differences, it's easy to contain the similarities, but to contain the differences, because Aquarian is about the community of individuals that are free to be themselves, i.e. different, because if you're yourself, you're unlikely like anyone else. But the community of that, and the Saturn is not just even containment, because Saturn is safety. So it's like we're being challenged and invited to start practicing this, if you don't already, if you're not already practicing, but of how to do that, how to be comfortable and feel safe with all our different and multiple points of view. And a good starting point would be yourself. So if you have a sense of, and this is also, I think, Aquarius, a Leo piece, if you have a sense of yourself being like a fractured individual or God, I mean, this is such a weird story. Okay, maybe like that. I don't know. Okay. So if you feel it within yourself that you have like multiplicities and many incongruences and many conflicting pieces, and yet you identify and feel at home with all of them or many of them that are conflicting, that's a good starting point, because you can't accept someone else unless you accept it yourself. I mean, you can, but then I would question the motives. Why accepting someone else but not yourself? And yeah, so that I think is another invitation. And it's also back to the beginning of this story, which I think it's wonderfully Saturn-Uranus story. And I love the fact that it's not about, because, I feel like I'm, being a bit different there, which is kind of always my motivation to add stuff that it's not out there, and whether I'm succeeding in that or not, I'm not sure. Is that it's typically, and I would have done this before if this didn't land on my lap, like look to outside the culture, the politics, the weather, all these kind of external, more traditional things. But this story is unfolding within the esoteric community, and that esoteric word and the world of esoteria is very much Uranian. And so hence why I love the fact that this is the Saturn-Uranus story, or this is the story during the Saturn-Uranus square. And there was one last piece there about the individuality, and I think I may have lost it now. Individuality that we... Oh yeah, the motives, and starting to cultivate this living together with all your multiplicities happily ever after in your own skin, and being comfortable with all these conflicting pieces of you. And yeah, I'm speaking from experience, as I always do, and in the language, human design language, I'm a 3/5, so everything I utter is kind of, I lived it one way or the other. So yeah, this has been most radical and most profound and most empowering shift for me, to accept that I am all that. And now there's a whole long list which is not for here. But yeah, so yeah, hopefully this was helpful, and yeah, I will be looking at this. I can see some comments there. I'm so sorry, I'm not sure what to do. Can I look at this? Oh. Okay, I have noted who you are, I know who you are, and I'll be in touch if I don't manage to retrieve these things. So sorry, and thank you. I'll get better at this.